everybody. This, as you can tell, is me. And I was in the middle of making a video. And, I was just carrying on about lug nuts and tires. And I was actually I had a pretty good idea. I was going to do a video because I put new wheels on my car. And so I was going to do a video about that. It was just going to be something quick. Maybe somewhat educational as far as tires are concerned and wheels, I guess, to that matter. And just never got around to putting it up. And a couple of things that happened with that is, first of all, within 24 hours of getting my brand new wheels, my brake calipers failed, which they were practically brand new. They were only a year old, and they leaked brake fluid all over my wheels, and I had to drive it with no brakes to get it where it needed to be. That was pretty sketch. So it didn't happen. My new wheels, I was obviously frustrated about, but here I was carrying on about all that and going on about the lug nuts and the tires. And in this picture you can actually see that tire looks really low and it was really weather cracked, and just showing you how the lug nuts faded over time, on and on and on and on and so forth, and those faded as well. So I had a pretty good idea, and then this was actually after I dropped it off at the shop that was just down the street from where the brakes failed. You can see a little glimpse of the new wheels there. But just after the brakes failed, I dropped it off at a shop and just said, hey, I'm a long ways from home with this. Can you take a look at it? And they eventually just told me what I already knew and said, well, your calipers should have a warranty on them. So I decided to just do the work myself. So this was me loading it up on the trailer and getting it all ready to go. Before I dive into all of this, though, and before I dive into the repairs on the car, I want to give you a little bit of the history of the car, because I think that helps put things into perspective as far as where the car has been and compared to where it is now. So let's just go ahead and take a minute. We're going to rewind a little bit. Okay, so this is my car fairly on in its early life. It's a 2000 Honda Accord. When I was young, back in 1998, I was a senior in high school, back when this body style was brand new, and I worked at the Honda dealer as part of my high school program, and I just loved the way that these looked, so I wanted one. So in 2005 I found one, and I was very specific. I wanted dark blue, manual transmission, EX, which means it has the sunroof, which I found, which is what this was. And then over time I added my touch to it and put some wheels on it and whatever, and eventually I ended up moving to New York. And when I moved to New York, the roads there, if you've ever been there, the roads in New York are awful, and I ended up ruining my wheels and whatever, but the journey itself was amazing. The time there was good. It was, I think, meant to be in a lot of ways. But there's my car, and that's my car shining in New York, looking good. But as you can tell in some of these pictures, the paint starts to deteriorate. Man, New York was rough on my car, on my paint, on my wheels. My car got really beat up in New York. And so, there's another example. I mean, look how much snow was on that thing, and ice and the whole bit. So, I ended up having it for quite a few years up to this point. I mean, it was probably 4 or 5 years in at this point. But I eventually ended up needing to replace my wheels and change things up just because of the wear and the tear on it. And I ended up with these ugly wheels. Look at these things right here. Ugh! Got it in the Bronx, in the ghetto. It's just went to some little hole in the wall, shady place. They were probably stolen, I don't even know. But ended up, needed some wheels, so I downsized, got something that would work just to get me around and get me home. And then when I moved to Arizona, I got some different wheels, but you can tell that the paint's starting to get ugly. My kids actually keyed the car up a little bit, just playing around it in the garage. And, you know, but this car was my baby. There was nothing, nothing I wouldn't want more as far as cars go than this car, you know. And so, you know, I decided, you know what, I'm going to give this car a new paint job. So I went ahead and sanded her down, got her down pretty low, and went ahead and repainted everything. You know, it was a lot of work, and I had my kids help, even though they were really little. And, you know, so I ended up doing a lot of the work and getting it cleaned up and prepped. And, you know, and I just rattle canned it. I just went down into the store, bought some spray paint, and covered everything, and then prepped everything as good as I could. And we spray painted it, and just spray painted the whole thing. And, you know, you can kind of tell, you know, depending on how the light's hitting it, but it wasn't something that was meant to be perfect, but it looked way better than what it would have looked like had I left it alone. You know, that beautiful dark blue metallic paint was a thing of the past. So we went flat black with it, and really just tried to make the car look as good as it was, because the interior of the car, the powertrain of the car, everything on the car was actually really good still. The paint took a lot of abuse, again, in New York, and in the snow and the salt and so on and so forth. So got her up and going again, got her painted, looking black. This is about the same time that I got it finally paid off. We're talking like 2010. Well, this is probably like 2012-ish. Even this picture here, where my crank seal actually fell out driving home from work one day, and I just made sure there was enough oil in it, and I took it down to the dealer to have them fix it. Turns out there's a recall for a plate that I didn't have on my car. And then something terrible happened. I got hit head on while I was stopped at an intersection. My car was totaled, and I was just so just torn up about it. This was my girl. You know, I looked far and wide for this car, and to have this be the end of it, I was so sad. And, you know, I didn't end up without scratches either. In fact, I went to the hospital in an ambulance on a backboard. I had a concussion, neck strains, lacerations. I ended up headbutting and punching the windshield when impact happened, because I was at a dead stop. But my car, no doubt in my mind, my car saved my life, because where it crumpled, it did exactly what it was designed to do. Airbags popped, and that whole left side of the car took all the impact. And, you know, and I was sad, and I was attached to it, but you know what? I finally got to a point where I was like, you know what? We will rebuild. So I found this shell, and this shell was a different car, not quite as nice, didn't have a sunroof, but I was like, you know what? I'm gonna gut this thing. I'm gonna put all my stuff in this car. And that's what I did. Put my car up next to the other car, and we gutted this one. I pulled the interior completely out of it. I pulled the engine out of it. I pulled the automatic transmission out of it. Everything. Rear drums. I've switched everything to rear disc. I put a manual transmission in it. I put my engine out of my car in it. Everything got switched. And, you know, my stuff went in. I ripped all the gross stuff out, and it was gross. It was so gross in this car when I was gutting it. And I finally got to start putting it back together, and, you know, the excitement was building. And I mean, the timeline between wrecked and when it finally started was about 5 years. So you're talking like this anticipation, you know. I'm attached to this car. Even to this day, I'm still attached to this car. And, you know, she's still my baby, even though I've got a lot of other nice cars. But here's the first start. Okay, here we go. Got the old Acura acting as a
battery source. We got the we got power because the anti-theft light on the stereo's on. And we're gonna go ahead and give it a shot. Push the old clutch in. Make sure she's in neutral. And key in. Here we go.
Alright, so we finally did get her started. Threw in my subwoofer, threw in my samurai sword shifter, and then it was time to get her painted. Trying to make her look like a real car. So, you know, I got her all prepped up, got her put in a spot when we, again, rattle can, so it wasn't like we went too crazy. And this time we went blue. I left the bumper black just because I, you know, was just messing with things. But I kind of, you know, I was happy with the way it looked. I was happy with the blue, but I felt like we needed a little spice. So I threw some spice in there and came out with the shark mouth. You know, and overall I was happy with it. I was happy with the way that it turned out. I was happy with the way it looked. I thought it looked really good. And I got a lot of looks, got a lot of compliments on it. But at the same time, over time, it started to look fade and it started to look like a puffy little cloud, to put it lightly, or I think some people even called it a marshmallow. So, you know, I was still happy with it for a while, but eventually we got to a point where I was like, you know what, maybe I should refresh it. You know, I had replaced the door in it, which is right there. I replaced the door in it and a few other things. The door had problems. The hood started looking gross because of the bra that I had on the hood. So I sanded her back down in August of 2019, and I was like, you know what, we're going to do it again. So I sanded it down to the metal, and this time we went with flat white. And you know what, I thought it looked alright. Left the bumper for a little bit, but I was like, nah, that's got to go. It looks too bad. So we cleaned it up a little bit, painted it the same color as the car, and bam, there she is. She looked really good when she was clean. When she was first painted, and she still looks pretty good. So, you know, I rolled the SEMA like that, painted my wheels black, lowered the car, did a few other things to kind of touch it up and make it nicer. And you know, that was that. I was happy with it, and rolled around with it, and you know, she looks good, and she still, as you guys know, has this paint job today. But what happened to the other car? What happened to the wrecked car? What happened to this guy? I can't just leave it hanging. I can't just forget about her, especially since I had parked it over at my in-laws on their property. So, you know what? I ended up just loading it up on a trailer, and it was decided it was time to bring her home. And, you know, my closure, I was good. I was, as far as attachment goes, I was good. So check this out.
Officially a car in two pieces. Should be interesting to see what happens next. Okay, bye.
Okay, so what about the car as it sits today? Okay, so you know, I just gave you a little bit of a clip of the car getting loaded up on the trailer. Well, you know what? Here she is on the trailer. The brakes went out on it. She was too far away from home for me to tow it or to drive it home with no brakes, because there was no pedal at all. And so what I did was I threw it up on the trailer. We towed her home. And then, you know what? I spent the money. I wanted to make sure we get it right. I wanted to make sure that my kids who will be driving it are good. I don't want there to be any issues with the car going forward. So, towed it home. We shoved it off the trailer, just like this. And there she goes. And you know what? The rest is in part 2. Yep, there's a part 2 to this story. I don't normally do a part 2. I know this one's been a little bit different, but I thought it was important to understand the backstory to this car before I continue, because this car is me. This car is, it took me years to find this car, and granted, it's not what it once was in the dark blue, metallic, manual transmission EX with a sunroof. But she's still my car. She's still, the same engine, the same interior, everything is the same. And so, other than obviously a new sunroof. But I swapped out everything else. Clutch, transmission, rear end, so it's got the rear disc in it that the EXs have. Like, everything that I could possibly switch out got switched out. And so this is to be continued. Just real quick, want to say thanks for watching. Hope I see you in the next video in part 2. And appreciate you supporting me, following me, giving me a thumbs up and a subscription, and sharing with your friends and all that good stuff. And otherwise, we'll see you in the next video.